Well, welcome back to How to Make an Exodus Explorer with the Caldwells, and we're very excited to have them again. We're back to hear more about their unplanned journey into becoming an Exodus Explorer. And I have Jim and Penny Caldwell with me. And what I understand is that you had some kind of a supernatural vision, while you're in Saudi Arabia. And for some people, they're like, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. That doesn't make any sense. And that would have been you, right, Jim? You would have
said the same.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, but you were inspired by this sense that you were supposed to go look for the Ark of the Covenant. So where did you go? You ended up heading off to Egypt. So let's pick it up there.
Right. So, long story. But what I did is I took the Bible apart. I actually had to tear pages out and carry them with me into the refinery to figure out where the Ark of the Covenant was made. And that ends up being at Mount Sinai in Egypt. So that was the plan. We were going to put a trip together. It was quick. We had 1 month to be out of kingdom. We had to leave our home by January and be out of the kingdom for a month. So everything shifted from going to Europe or Bahrain or somewhere else to going to Mount Sinai. So by the time we got to that, through the study in the Bible, through all of the watching of the Ten Commandments movie by Cecil B. DeMille and all that stuff, we were pumped and ready to go. And we were going to Mount Sinai to find out what God had in store for us there. So I'll let her talk about the journey and the preparation.
By that time, the one thing that was extremely important, we didn't really realize it at the time, Tim, but as I had previously stated, when we first got into Kingdom, we got into this group of folks that were doing all this desert camping, and we had learned an awful lot about what you do and what you don't do. What kind of, we had to carry extra belts and batteries and that sort of thing.
2 spare tires.
Right. If you're out in the desert for a good length of time. And we had learned all of this stuff. And so when we get this odd experience that had happened to Jim and decided, okay, well, we'll just throw everything in the truck and drive to Egypt for a month. It wasn't so far-fetched. And that was due to, the experiences that we had had when we first got to Arabia and how we had learned to live life in the desert and living in a tent for days at a time. So this is exactly what we did. We took off for Egypt.
I look at it as it was a time where God was preparing us for what was to come.
Sure.
We had no idea.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for the guy that was my boss and he loved to camp, that part of this may have never happened, because we were one of the few in the community that actually ventured out into the desert.
Okay, son, I don't want you falling off of this thing.
It was extremely dangerous. I can't stress that point enough.
Yeah.
We carried a 30-gallon water tank on the roof of the truck, extra water containers inside, and spare parts for everything that was commonly breaking out in the desert. So it was we had to plan it out well. And imagine that most people are going on vacation for that month of repatriation that we were getting ready to have. Here we are going across the country, staying in Kingdom, into Egypt of all places. By ourselves. That's just something I'm warning you don't.
And, sinking deeper into the Middle East. It's like you said, most people took off for Europe around Christmas time or the like. But at any rate, we wanted to make a beeline straight to St. Catherine's, the traditional site of Mount Sinai in Arabia. And we wanted to get there as quickly as we could. What we were not aware of is that once we crossed over into Jordan, before this was prior to some of the agreements that are currently in place. At that time, if you crossed over from Jordan into Israel, there were only a couple of places you could do it. But for us to get our truck in and go straight to the Sinai Peninsula, what you had to do at that time was to get on the ferry at Aqaba, Jordan, and it was a massive ferry that was called the Jimmy Z. I'll never forget this because I was mortified. I was horrified to get on this thing because it wasn't too many months prior to that a ferry carrying about 600 people had gone down in the Red Sea and everyone aboard was killed. So it wasn't I wasn't real thrilled about getting on this massive ferry with 1,000 people and all manner of trucks and cars and
18-wheelers.
18-wheelers
Yeah,
even. This was a
trucks.
massive ferry. But we did it anyway, and the problem was our paperwork was not correct. We did not know that we had to have this documentation called a triptych to drive your vehicle into Egypt. And as a result, we got stuck in Nuweiba. In fact, what they actually did was impound our vehicle because we didn't have the right paperwork. So we spent the first couple of days in Egypt at Nuweiba on the Sinai Peninsula, awaiting to get all of that paperwork properly done. And that took a while.
For some people, they might not realize that Nuweiba Beach is the southern tip. Or I'm sorry, you're in Aqaba, right?
Right. From Aqaba, we would be moving westward across the Gulf of Aqaba to the port of Nuweiba, and that was actually an entry port to Egypt at the time. We couldn't just drive around because you would have had to driven through a portion of Israel through Eilat and gone down, and that wasn't allowed at the time.
Okay, so you went from Jordan, then across the Red Sea, and you were impounded at Nuweiba?
At Nuweiba. They kept our truck there. They allowed us to go.
We were picked up by a cab.
Right, and they allowed us to go to the hotel. But until we got the paperwork done, it was a couple of days later. And for us, that couple of days waiting to be able to take our trip down to, the traditional Mount Sinai, it just seemed like forever.
We're about 30 kilometers from St. Catherine's.
I remember we did finally get it all done. And because Jim had studied so much in the scripture, and of course, at the time, all we had available to us really was the Ten Commandments movie. Charlton Heston as Moses, that classic old movie. And our kids, we had just made them watch that over and over and over again so that they would sort of have in their mind what we were going down there to see, what this, wonderful place was. And I remember we were so excited.
Okay, finally here.
And when we pulled up to the traditional site, something, I don't know how to describe this because you can't just go on feelings, but this is the backstory. And something just didn't seem right when we got there. And I guess the first thing that stood out in my mind was, as we traveled down, I was wondering where in the world in this valley, when you get to that area, are you going to put 1 million people? Or a huge number of people? And I do understand that there is a controversy and many sides to this story. Some believe that the crowds were smaller, some believe that it was even larger. But I was trying to figure out in my mind, and it hit Jim the same way, where in the world are you going to put all these tents of all these Israelites and the mixed multitude that were supposed to have come up out of the land of Egypt? Where are you going to fit all of that in this very narrow little valley down here? And the other thing was, it seemed that the mountain was not very high. And that this is going to sound really silly, but I'm just telling you exactly what hit us. I thought to myself, if that's the mountain, I could see a man standing from where our vantage point right now in this valley. I'm looking up to the top of the traditional Mount Sinai, and I believe I could actually see a man standing on the top of that mountain. And the scripture was rolling around and around in my head about how they couldn't find Moses for this whole length of time, such that they ended up making a golden calf according to the biblical narrative because they lost Moses and they couldn't figure out where God was. So they're going to end up building a golden calf. So this was our first impression of driving up to this spot. And then that rapidly disintegrated into, what in the world are we doing in this place? You have you must have ate a bad piece of pizza or something. You have this ridiculous experience with this vision of the ark. Oh my goodness. Now we're in Egypt. What did you think? We're just going to zoom down here to this traditional site and walk into a cave and there's the Ark of the Covenant. At this point, we were not happy campers because we thought, what are we doing here? This doesn't even appear to fit any kind of conceptuality that is promoted in the biblical narrative. We must have lost our minds. So after spending about a half a day there, at the time we were not allowed to try to ascend the mountain because there had been a snowfall the day before, and everything was closed down. We couldn't even try to ascend, the normal tourist, where they allow you to go, the path up to the top. It wasn't even allowed because they felt like it was dangerous because there was snow there. So we didn't even get to do that. And we left there in great disappointment thinking, okay, number one, you were right. People who have visions are kooks, and now you're one of them. So we just, what we're going to do, we're going to go see every single thing we can in Egypt, and then we're going to leave. So we did that over the next 4 weeks. One of the things that we had to agree to, our original thought when we planned the trip out was that we would enter into the Sinai Peninsula from Aqaba, Jordan. We would cross the Gulf of Aqaba. We would enter in at the Nuweiba port, and then we would do our Mount Sinai thing, and then we would go all through Egypt, visit everything, but we were going to exit through Alexandria and make our way back a different route. But part of the original thing that we had to agree to, because we did not have this triptych, was that they were going to make us leave through the same port of entry so that they could make sure that we didn't sell our vehicle while in Egypt and not give them the tax money. That was the whole thing at that time.
Okay, so that means that you had to come back to Nuweiba.
We had to come back to Nuweiba, and it's we see on this side of the whole adventure, we see how all these little components came together to force us to go a certain path. And it ended up being very important that we came back through that port of Nuweiba. But we did exactly what we said. We took all of the visions of grandeur out of our head. We saw every tomb, temple, and pyramid in Egypt. We drove all the way down to the border of Sudan, beyond Aswan. We drove the whole country of Egypt, us and our kids, camping all along the way. We stayed in a few hotels along the way. But by and large, we knew Egypt by the time the whole show was over.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, we spent
a lot of time in the museum. We learned a lot in the museum. We saw a lot of the chariots of Tutankhamun and other chariot wheels. So we had a lot of information there that was given to us. But the whole thing, I believe, in going to the mountain was a setup. It's one of those moments where you look back on and say, wow, that was a miracle that things worked out the way it did. The Bible description and the way we had built this up was, if you read these with with your mind, looking at it through your mind as a video, you get perspectives and visions and ideas through the text that when you get to this location, this traditional Mount Sinai, it blows the mold of what you've envisioned this was going to look like. I know that's kind of out there, but the Bible is really filled with a lot of descriptive language that builds, sets the scene for you. And that when you go there and there's nothing, I mean, absolutely nothing there, then you begin to question, well, it wasn't real in the first place. I
Right.
mean, could this have happened at this location at all? I mean, nothing fits the story. And so that to me broke my heart and just knocked me down on my knees and said, this isn't the Bible. I believe everything I see, but this doesn't fit what the Bible says. And so it was hugely disappointing to me.
Yeah, and I think for different people. Now I know people have gone to traditional Mount Sinai and have felt like they've had a spiritual experience, and they said, "Well, this is it," and they're there. And I know the same is true when you go to Garden of Gethsemane, or is it the tomb? There's different places where when we go to different places, we're asking those questions, and so the question then is not whether or not the Bible event happened, but do we have the right place, or the right time? And but I know something happened when you got back to Nuweiba, but we're going to save that for the next time we get together, because something happened. You just set it up without telling us what happened, but it changed the course of your life, right?
It did. It really did.
It did.
Okay. Well, do you want to give me a little teaser? But something happened.
Well, as we're going back to Nuweiba, we stay at a hotel in Haragata, is it? Or at the Hilton?
Well, we
at the
stayed at
Fayoum
Haragata
Village
first, but then we went to Sharm el Sheikh.
Sharm el Sheikh. Okay. And in Sharm el Sheikh, Penny, we're in a bookstore, and Penny, right out of the blue, reaches down and picks up a book called The Gold Mines of Midian.
In fact,
I think she can put her finger on
go out right there.
Yeah. And
Let's
that
see, a little bit further.
And you're going the wrong way. The back there. There you go. All right. So The
Right
Gold
there.
Mines of Midian, a book by Sir Richard Burton, written in the 1800s. And in the back of that book is a map. And in that map, there is when you roll it out, it says that the land of Midian, where the Mount Sinai and all these things took place,
Right there.
is actually in Saudi Arabia. So suddenly, from that, if you can see the yellow stickies and the highlighting that I have done in that book from those days, you can actually see the map, and that the shoreline of Midian is in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So immediately from that moment forward, we have the whole idea of this story of going after the Ark of the Covenant just explodes
It
again.
exploded. It really did.
And the excitement and everything about it just came flooding back, and then we'll continue on once we get to know it.
All right. Well, we're gonna pick it up after in our next session, and we're gonna talk about the month of January, because a lot of this happened in the month of January.
It did.
Big events. So this is over 30 years ago almost.
30 years.
To the date
This
here.
year.
Next month will be
Yeah.
exactly 30 years.
Yeah, so 30 years ago, and you've looked at dates and different things where things have happened in your life. And when I ended up calling you and saying, hey, I think we should do this, you were just thinking and praying too about, well, how will this story ever get out? And as I thought about it, I thought, well, what should we do? And, we've been losing friends. Just recently, we lost Dr. Leonard Moeller. And I felt that we needed to tell as much as we can and tell the stories. And so this month we're focusing on the making of an Exodus Explorer, and we're going to look at that because this whole next year is Journey to Mount Sinai. So it's going to be exciting, and there's a lot more to unpack. Why now? Why do we need to know about this now? All that's coming as this coming year unfolds. So thank you, Jim and Penny, for being a part of this. And once again, this is Patterns of Evidence Foundation and the community of the Historical Faith Society. Thank you for watching. God bless.
Thank you so much, Jim.